our guest for today. Emmy Award-winning journalist, okay, writer, TV personality, the headache of all the racist white supremacists living in America. Jemele Hill, y'all! Keep it going, keep it going, keep it going! I heard you love Mary J. Blige.
Yeah, I feel like somebody got the memo about my love for the queen of R&B soul.
Yes, we all got the memo.
There's one queen of soul. She's from my city, so I, got to make sure. Shout out to Aretha Franklin.
Of course, the queen.
Detroit's finest.
Jemele Hill is in Brooklyn, y'all. Jemele. The memoir. The paperback version is out today, by the way. That's why we did this on a Tuesday. So, of course, we're appreciative of everybody who came out. And we are going to dig into your life because who knew that this is what you went through, but all for good reason, because where you are now is such an inspiration. And that's why we have you here today.
Well, I really appreciate you all coming out on a school night. It's just amazing energy in this room. The poets, those wonderful artists. I mean, every word just was resonating in my soul. So I thank you all for that wonderful performance. And obviously, I think you all knew I could relate to a lot of the subject matter, which I discuss in Uphill. So this is already, we haven't even gotten into the teeth of it. It's already been an incredible night.
Thank you. Thank you all, of course. Now, with Uphill, I am so enamored, and I can't believe that, with your journey, that you decided to put all this out into the universe and let us all in your business, because, girl, so much has happened in your life, and I do like to give a precursor to all of our guests, too, because they're writers, they're aspiring authors, and I'm sure they want to know how you went from, being a writer, being a contributor, a columnist, to author. When did you decide, hey, I'm going to tell y'all my business in this memoir? I'm going to take that journal that my mom found
right.
and publish it.
Well, this is not, I've always wanted to be an author. I've known since I was a little girl that I wanted to be a writer. And the thing is, though, I wanted and still do want to write fiction. So the idea of doing a book about me and writing about my experiences was never on the table. And not because I was ashamed of how I grew up, ashamed of anything in my background, but, I just wanted, I wanted the freedom to create the world that I wanted to see. And that's not to say that you can't do that to a little bit of a degree in a memoir, but that's why I always love fiction, is that it allows you to create the reality or show a different part of the reality that maybe people don't think about. It just felt like that was more, it just had more options, more room to play with. So to be perfectly honest, I wrote the memoir, or the reason the idea came about was because the money was there.
Come on, we're not mad at that.
It's like, there was a lot of interest by several publishing companies in my memoir, and my literary agent was like, this book is going to go to auction, which it did, and if you ever get the opportunity, that is a blessing in itself. It's hard out here to sell books. It's hard out here to pitch books. If your book can ever go to auction, that is like the ideal situation, because that means multiple people are bidding on the rights to your story. And so once that became realized, I said, okay, I guess I got to write this book now. And because memoirs don't usually have part two, I know people have done multiple books about themselves. I wanted to make sure I laid everything out there because it would be doing you all a disservice if I was not transparent, right? And I know a lot of you have probably read, memoirs by celebrities or other people, and you feel like they're not being honest. And I never wanted somebody to say that about my book. So, and plus, if you tell your own story, people really can't talk shit about you later.
Period.
You already laid it out there. You know what I'm saying?
You're admitting to it.
I'm admitting, yes, I did this. So there's nothing really to uncover. So at any rate, I just wanted to make sure that not only was I transparent, but I gave people this sense that a lot of the things that we all can relate to, we've been through, there's no shame there. I wanted to remove that layer of shame. Poverty, if you grew up, poor, I grew up poor, it's like there's a shame that comes with that you carry with you the rest of your life. Even if you are financially successful or just successful within whatever is your definition of success, it follows you. And so I wanted the people who experience that and, having addicts in their families and sexual abuse through their families, like there is no shame in what you went through. And so I hope that it opened the door for some positive and meaningful and thorough conversations.
Absolutely. Now, while you were going through the writing process for the memoir, talk to us about that. Did you have to stop and cry a little bit, or were you kind of just like, I done cried all my tears, so I'm gonna get this thing out?
Well, the most difficult part of the memoir of writing it was that, my mother's prominently featured in it, and talking about what she went through, what I went through, what we together went through, and having to ask her about some of the worst moments in her life was not easy. And I saved those conversations for sort of laugh. I asked her about other things just to make sure I was remembering everything accurately. And she became a bit of a family historian, so I wanted to ask her about other people in my family as I wrote this to make sure I had it right. But asking her about these moments that really changed her forever, that broke her in some ways, in which she can't be put back together, it's hard to ask her about that. And there was a lot of information that I uncovered from her that I didn't know that I wrote about. And what I thought were her worst moments, there were even lower moments. And that was, tough to hear. So that part was hard. There were times where I was writing and crying. A lot of these things I felt like I had already dealt with. So then to unlock that door and pull out all the bones once again, that was not always fun to do. From an organizational standpoint, I put myself on a schedule. I got 2 great bits of advice about writing this memoir. One was from Rick Ross, and one was from Walter Mosley, who's one of the best living authors that we have. But Walter Mosley told me, he was like, you have to put yourself on a schedule. And he writes, I don't know, he got like 11 books, right? Walter Mosley writes for at least 2 hours a day, no matter where he is in the world. That's what he told me to do, and I put myself on a schedule, and that's how it allowed me to finish. Rick Ross was the one that told me to break my life down. He was working on his memoir into 16 parts. Wow. I was like, damn, that's smart. Because you think about, what do I leave in, what do I leave out? But once you start to organize your life that way, then you see the through lines. Then the story is starting to form and congeal right before my eyes. And so it helped me see it. It helped me see the most important part of the story, a beginning, middle, end. And I finally got to see it by organizing it that way. So it was quite a process.
Writers, aspiring authors, I hope you're taking notes, okay? Because Jemele Hill had to go through it in order to get to this memoir, okay? Now, your upbringing. You talk a lot about, living in poverty and, of course, just the obstacles that you went through. What was kind of the shining light that allowed you to keep going and allowed you to be in search of the resources that got you to where you are now?
Well, I think your parents, yes, they guide you, but they also show you what not to do. And a lot of times they show you that without specifically telling you that. You just see it. And so both of my parents are recovering drug addicts. My father, when he was going through his heroin addiction, he was pretty estranged from my life. And I had to witness my mother's addiction because she was my primary caretaker, and that's who I lived with. And so I had to witness a lot of that up close. And even through the worst days, because they were never married and never lived together when I was growing up. But having to go through that and see that, I wanted better for myself. I was like, I know this can't be it. And my parents also, they never seemed like the life that they were leading at various points. They never made that shit sound cool. They never were like, this is what you need to do. They never, if anything, you saw how the demons chased them all the time. So I was never under some impression like I need to follow in this path. So that was helpful. I had a very powerful grandmother, as we all, as a lot of us do. Those
Come on, Grandma.
You know what I'm saying? Those grandmas, they'll pull you through. And so, and even my mom, when she was at her worst, she was still a mother. And she still expected me to get good grades. She still expected me to go to school. Like, there was none of that, regardless of what I'm going through, regardless of what you see me do, there is no excuse for you not to achieve and not to want better for yourself. And so I think that was instrumental in me having that feeling. And once I decided in 10th grade that I wanted to be a journalist, it was a very single-minded pursuit. It's like, no, I know there's more. There's more out here. And I say it all the time. It's like journalism saved my life. I mean, it really did. Writing, being able to create, those were life-saving things. Express myself, having journals, all those things were just life-saving. So that was what carried me through.
And here we are today. Come on, y'all.
Here we are on the stoop today.
Now, in the memoir, you talk about your mom finding your journal. Oh my God.
You're going to make me relive this ass whooping again that I got.
The way you described it, sis.
It's funny now. It wasn't funny then. So one of the stories I tell in the memoir is I kept a journal. I forgot how old I was exactly when I got my first one, but this might have been like my second one. I think I was in middle school solidly. And, it's a journal. Like, you write it with the expectation no one will ever discover it. So, it was more than a few pages. I was kind of going in on my mom and
going in,
using some very frank cuss words. Cuss words I heard her use quite frequently, hence why I picked them up. And so, I can't say there's really many fearful moments that I have, but top 5, and it's not 5, is coming home, making a left past the living room and seeing my mother sitting at the dining room table with that journal in front of her. And it was in that moment, I just wish teleportation was real. Because I was like, can someone please, somebody call the Avengers, assemble, because I'm about to catch one. So she was not happy, and I got a beat down, a very memorable one. She put all my stuff in a garbage bag and dropped me off at my dad's job and was like, you can have her now.
Did that give you a sense of freedom afterwards,
though?
No, I mean, just the fact that she now knew what was in your journal and how you were feeling. And
no.
I
was
so scared.
Terrified. I was mortified.
Mm-hmm.
You feel exposed as a part of you, even though, a lot of y'all here in this room grew up with a black mama. You know how it is. Can't close her doors. Like, the idea of privacy doesn't exist. Does not exist. So, I did feel as if they're, sort of personally violated in the sense of like, man, these were like some of my deepest thoughts. Some of it was in anger, but there was a lot of emotion in that. And I just felt so raw and exposed. And we never had a single conversation about it at that. And I just wonder how much better, not until much later when I was an adult. And she said the reason, because she admits she went overboard in the punishment. And she was like, the reason I did is because a lot of the things you said in there were true. And it hurt because I knew that you knew, And so that helped me also put it in a much different perspective beyond just the traumatizing moment of feeling exposed, that there was something happening on the other side in that moment I didn't really understand. And so it was important for me to tell that story in the book, just to, not only give a bat signal to all the people everywhere who had their journals discovered, but also, to understand that, like, there are so many things you do not get as a child that once you really and fully understand what your parents have gone through, it gives you a much different perspective about them. So when people ask me, like, what do you want people to take away from this book? I'm like, I want you all to have the toughest conversations that you haven't had with the people closest to you. Because I can't tell you how much that unburdened me and my mother's relationship, being able to talk about things that we hadn't discussed or given voice to, or for me to understand fully what she was going through. It did a lot to, I always gave my mother a lot of grace, but I gave her even more grace through the process of writing this book. So for that alone, it was worth it. It was worth it to write this.
Absolutely. And it almost gives you a sense of, understanding for humans all over. Yeah, our parents are our parents, but they're humans too, who are just trying to figure it out, right?
Yeah, I mean, if we think about how we are, and, like, my mother had me when she was 18. I could not imagine having being 18-year-old with a full human that I have to take care of.
Right.
Like, and she, there were no nannies, night nurses, like none of that other stuff. She was doing that off of ADC check. So it's just kind of like, I can't imagine having to do that. And when you understand that your parents were learning on the job and that all the stuff was new to them too, and particularly if they had you when you were younger, they had to go through those adult bumps and pains that we've all been through. But a lot of us have been fortunate enough to have to go through that without having a child to take care of. So it just, I'm not saying that, your parents don't mess up, and I'm not saying it's not things they need to be accountable for, because that was the other key part of me and my mother mending our relationship, was she was accountable for all the things that she did. But that's not to say that, accountability shouldn't exist, but it is to say that I have a feeling that once you start asking your parents those questions you haven't thought to ask them, you will have a lot more grace for them.
Absolutely. Now, I do want to get into your first sense of relief, where it was just like, I see the light, I know that I can do this, and I believe that was with the National Association of Black Journalists.
It was. So NABJ, as it is called, is the largest minority journalism organization in the country, more than 3,000 members. It's got a rich legacy. And I joined it when I was in high school. I was very fortunate because I was a part of an apprenticeship program in Detroit where they took selected high school students from across the city, taught you about how newspapers work, journalism, that kind of thing. And that summer, NABJ was in Detroit, the summer I did this program. And so there was a black woman who heads this program, and she marched us all to NABJ, made us all sign up for student memberships. And it was life-changing because, as was discussed earlier, it's like you need to sometimes see people doing the thing you would love to do in order to give you the fuel you need to keep going in the moments where it feels like the world is conspiring against you doing that thing you want to do. And so being in the company of thousands of journalists who were doing the thing that I wanted to do, it made a grave, grave impression. And so by the time I got to the points in my career where I'm going in the locker rooms and I'm looking around and I'm either the only black person in there, the only woman in there, definitely the only black woman in there. When you're in that isolating space, I have the muscle memory of knowing what the NABJ convention looks like. It helps me get through being the only black woman and there's 40 white dudes in there and they all looking at you like you don't belong. So that's why that was just so affirming for me.
And it prepared you for everything that you ended up experiencing throughout your career. And even as I read the memoir and you go through all the different places that you live. First of all, Jemele done lived in Raleigh,
yeah,
Orlando,
yeah.
Connecticut, where else?
DC.
DC.
Now I live in LA.
Now she's in LA. And everything that you went through in those different cities as a writer, all came to what you went through at ESPN.
Yeah, I mean, every second, life is preparing you for some moments you don't even see coming.
Right.
And that was certainly the case when it came to like some of the things I faced on the back end of my career at ESPN. It was at the time, when I sent those tweets about the president and they became an international story. At the time, it didn't feel like what I was saying was controversial at all. Like I've said this 1,000 times. It's like it's
true.
It's one of the most unoriginal things I've ever said because it's so obvious. It was like, well, all right, you don't get credit for being like the sky is blue. Like we can all see it, but apparently we couldn't all see it, which was part of the backlash. Or there was a deep sense of denial about the person that had been elected to this office, and I did not expect the reaction. I didn't expect the president to say I should be fired. I didn't expect the press secretary to say I should be fired. But in that moment, I guess my thought process was, am I about to lose my job? I have no idea. But if I do, I
It
just
is what it
do. It
is.
is what it is. Like, I wasn't gonna take it back, and I wasn't gonna apologize for what I said. So it kind of has to be that. That's why any apology I issued around that time, it never said I was sorry for what I said and I apologized for what I said. I just apologized because I realized I definitely made my coworkers' life a little bit harder, by subjecting them to press they didn't deserve. So yeah, I apologize for that, but not for what I said, for sure.
And it continued to happen as much as you told your truth and said how you felt on the Twitter and on the air. And you just kept going into detention every single time.
Well, I try not to define my last year at ESPN or define my time at ESPN by my last year. I was there 12 years. It was the best job I've ever had, longest job I ever had. But it reinforced a lesson I already knew, and it's something that we have to constantly keep in mind in our individual workspaces, is that, it's a conditional relationship. No matter how long you've been there, no matter how many relationships you build in there, it's conditional. You provide them with your ideas, your talent, your output, they pay you. And beyond that, you have no obligation really to each other. And I think it was the first time in my career that I felt really let down by the place that I worked, which is that's an odd thing to say when we know what business we're in. We're not in a friendship business, And so, but nevertheless, it was something that was damaging about the fact that you have the president and the powers that be in government coming after you, and your company doesn't say anything. Because the way, when I was coming up as a young journalist, because I came up through newspapers, I didn't really want to be on TV. And so, but there was an unofficial credo that we all live by, which is, you don't let City Hall come after your reporters. You don't do that, because that's why we have a democracy, because we have a free press. And that means we are free from government persecution, okay, for criticizing said government. And so when you have someone who is criticized by someone holding the highest office, there should be a response to that other than silence. And so when that silence was there, that effectively let me know our relationship was over with. And as much as I was proud of many of the things that I'd done at ESPN, I felt like that was a moment that I'm not going to be able to unsee or unfeel that happened. So.
Wow. Now, I know before, you got to ESPN, there was a lot of pressure on you that you kind of had to let go, that prepared you for everything that you went through at ESPN as well, right? And I do believe that that's kind of what also let you kind of fly free afterwards, where it's just like, I already did everything that I could. Like, you went through the ropes.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's life. I mean, the perspective I've always had whenever I'm asked about how I felt about, the president personally coming after me, is like, to be honest, especially, and you'll know this if you've read my memoir, and certainly once you read it, is that that's not even a top 50 worst moment of my life. It really isn't. It's like, there's nothing that he could have possibly said about me that could have competed with any of the things that I saw and experienced as a child. Couldn't happen. So when it did happen, I was just like, I mean, all right.
Been there, done that.
Yeah, I mean, it was nothing really. It was nothing that I felt, any really real emotional response to. I mean, there were things I didn't like about it because of the way it disrupted my life. I didn't love getting, or I should say, I shouldn't even say it like the past. I didn't love still getting death threats. I did not love that. And it kind of changed the way I had to move and navigate, on a personal level, just because of, when you send that kind of bat signal to the people that tend to follow him, it is rough to deal with that element. So other than that part of it, like, somebody I don't respect thinks of me disrespectfully, I wouldn't even, there's no reason for me to care about that.
Right. Likewise.
I just can't even drum up enough you know what's.
Right.
I don't even know where that one would be. So it's just like, nah, I don't care.
Let's talk about all the love you received as a Black woman who, you said your piece. And you did it publicly. You did it on air. You did it on Twitter. And I can tell you for myself, I was just waiting. Who gonna mess with her? Because we all here.
Well, listen, I've always known that Black people had my back. Like and I'm not even talking about just being even when I was, quote, known, like long before that, at every level, at every turn. And it was Black people. I think that was a big reason, if not the main reason, like I didn't get fired, because so many Black folks were like, nah, you're not gonna do this.
We're not having it.
We're not having it. And there was a number of Black celebrities that also jumped in, and so that's when they realized that it was, for as much as they may have been taken aback or didn't like the reaction from one side of this, I was like, the other side of people in support were frankly a way bigger group, and so I think that had a lot to do with it. But once again, this is why I am disappointed when we see people from our community start to distance themselves from our community, if not outward reject, and then do the other job of just pummeling our community. Whenever I see that, I always wonder if that person knows at some point you got to come back to these same people you stepping on. Right. You're going to have to come back, because that world out there that you think, or that world that is validating how you're treating us, they don't want you. They don't want you. You're going to have to come over here, okay, and deal with us. And so that is why that's why I will always give my people the utmost grace, because I know that it's the only safe refuge I have.
Woo, come on, y'all. That's us right there.
It is.
What is some advice, before we wrap, because I know the audience has questions, what is some advice that you would give to a young journalist, a young aspiring author who, wants to be a part of these big corporations? And, you've experienced it, and you were able to stand your ground in that space. What's some advice that you would give?
Well, I'll keep this succinct. Never let other people outwork you, okay? You can control a lot. You can be on time. Doing the basics will get you far ahead. Being on time, doing what's asked, asking follow-ups, please and thank you. You'd be surprised how far those things take you on a basic level. Don't let any place, or know who you are before you walk into any place. Because if you don't know who you are and you go to some place, especially those that are big media corporations or have big names, that place will change you. So that's why you have to stay rooted and know who you are before you walk through the door. And I guess the final bit of advice I would say is, don't worry about a brand, actually have a product.
Take notes, come on.
I get asked so much about, how do you build your brand? How do you build your brand? How are you going to build a brand without a product? It's the work. The work will always take care of the brand, right? It's like you can't develop the brand if you got no work. You got to be able to show something, show you're proficient at something. It's the work. I know it's a glamorous job to be on ESPN, to host SportsCenter, but it wasn't about that job. It was about the 25 plus years I put into it to get to that job. My good friend Roland Martin says something that's so true, something he tells aspiring journalists. He asked them, they say, I want to do what you do. He said, you want to do what I do, but do you want to do what I did? And so that's what I would say to anybody with whatever you're aspiring to be. If there's somebody that you have on your vision board or That's the poster in your wall in the head of what you want to be like, who you want to be like, the type of success you want to attain. Look at the early parts of your career and ask yourself, are you willing to do that? Can you do that if it means getting to this? Can you do that if it doesn't mean getting to that? Right? Because I love this job as much now as I did when I was getting paid $30 a story to write freelance stories about high school sports when I was 21 years old. Love it just as much then. I loved it then, not knowing ESPN was even possible. So if you have that kind of commitment to whatever it is you want to do, then you'll be fine. The money will take care of itself.
The money will take care of itself, y'all. Do we have any questions for Jemele Hill before?
Thank you. Hey, Jemele.
It's from New Jersey, right?
From New Jersey.
Yeah.
But I'm originally from Bushwick.
All right.
Thank you, first of all, for saying the things that a lot of people are thinking but don't have the guts to say. Now, when you said what you said about the former president in September of 2017, and now we are in October of 2023, and he holds a 60% approval rating amongst his followers. Do you think that that means that we can't come back from that as a country, from where you're standing?
You mean if he's elected again?
Yeah.
No, I mean, and I think there are some things that were done during his presidency that we won't come back from. You know, I mean, listen, I don't want to sound like Debbie Downer, but I mean, our democracy is on life support right now. And I know it's really hard, especially when you talk about what your messaging should be to Black people, to convince us once again that this time is going to be different when we have so much overwhelming evidence to support the fact that it won't be. But if you really think about it, Black folks are what's holding this democracy together, because we are the stubborn, boisterous group that refuses to believe that what they wrote in the brochure wasn't true. We're gonna make sure it's true. And so by that measure, I know we all tired of going to the voting booth and voting like our lives do depend on it. I was like, once I would just like to vote for a new policy and not like my basic existence. You know, that would be nice one time. But it's gonna require, much like it did in 2020, the same, if not higher energy for that not to happen. Because if Donald Trump doesn't go to jail, I don't see how he's not elected again.
Here, my first question was about branding, but you answered that. My second question is a little personal, so please answer it as you wish. But can you talk a little bit about how you knew your husband was your person?
Oh, look at
That's only
this.
first part. As a
All
more
right.
outspoken Black woman, how did you know, felt safe, understood, and respected by him? And how would you be able to do the same?
Oh my. I got married in 2019. Yeah, thank you. So I was into my 40s, and one constant narrative we often hear is that women of us after a certain age, I guess we like expired meat, you know? Yes, that's the narrative. And that was not my story at all. And in terms of knowing that my husband was the person, one, he was funny. I love a man that has a good sense of humor. Two, confident, not arrogant. And he was just very comfortable being himself. And because I'm in the limelight, and know a few folks, you can't bring everybody into that circle. And one of the big tests that he passed is the first time we went to the ESPYs together. And we went to, at the ESPYs, you know, there's like an after party, but then there's the after party. And the after party is the good one. And so at the after party, I think LeBron threw this party. And so we're in this, it was an open air like club and that they had rented out. And it's like Kendrick Lamar is right there, Future's over there. You know, we were talking, I think, to Draymond Green and Kevin Love, and LeBron's right there. Like, so there's a lot of very notable people in this room. And my soon-to-be husband at the time, I mean, he was just himself. He was roasting him like he would his boys. He was just like, and just good banter. It was just a good vibe, and that's when I knew. I was like, I knew he would handle this whole experience confidently, and I just knew that's what I wanted in my life. Plus, I love the fact that I liked who I was with him. There's relationships that I've definitely had where I did not like the person they brought out. And I was like, yeah, I got to get away from you or I'm going to be on Snapped. And yeah, he just brings out all the best qualities that I want to have. And I want to be my best self for him. And I can't say I felt that way in previous relationships. So that's how I knew. And to your point about finding that safety and solace with somebody, I mean, for Black women especially, this is vital to our self-care. Not necessarily winding up in a long-term relationship or marriage or whatever you desire, but just having somewhere, be it in a friendship circle, be it in a family circle, be it in a romantic circle, like we have to be able to breathe and deflate somewhere. And so that also is one of the many reasons why I fell in love with him. Is like he was the place that I could do that, and that was important.
So my first question is, what did you learn about yourself while writing this memoir? Because you had to recount a lot of memories. So did you learn anything new about yourself? And part two, they always say all skin folk ain't your kinfolk. So how did you navigate spaces where the people who look like you weren't always rooting for you?
All right. Well, just so I don't forget our first question about what I learned about myself, it's like I think probably the most important takeaway is understanding that there was a lot of stuff that I had dealt with and that I certainly felt like I confronted emotionally, but there was a lot of stuff I didn't. And I think having to relive some of the things forced me to take a more effective inventory about how I've come to terms with how I grew up. And I think that was important for me to go, and certainly added some spice to my therapy sessions. So I think that part was important from that standpoint. It's just like, I'm glad this, severe oil change happened because it forced me to take stock. Now, dealing with the ops. It's like, how do you deal with having worked with one, if not more, of these types of people at virtually every media place I've worked at. Typically, it's easy to outmaneuver them because they're not that smart. I mean, truly. And it's like, okay. And their intentions and agenda is very obvious. I think as long as you have people, as long as y'all outnumber them or that person, then you're probably good. But do understand strategically what you're dealing with. And with some folks, you have to let go and let them be there instead of like constantly inviting them in the space and hoping they're going to change. It's like, nah, sometimes some people kind of are what they are. Typically, I just leave them folks alone. Just leave them alone. I mean, that's probably the best way, if anything. And then in every meeting after the meeting, you and the other Black folks can talk about them real bad. And that will also give you some solace and comfort. But I will say this too, I mean, because this has happened to me on more than one occasion, is that person who is not really skin folk or kinfolk, when the tricky dynamic is when somebody white asks you about them. Right, like, cause all the other Black people already know how they cut. So okay, we know what Tim is on, we got it. But when the white person come ask you, like, ooh, racial solidarity or not? Like, should I just expose Tim or? But that happened to me, and I was like, you know what? I'm not gonna block this person's blessing. They'll find out. And when somebody white asked me about somebody who was Black, who I knew, it wasn't just, about their just utter coolness. It was beyond the fact that, it was also the fact that they were not good at their job. And I'm like, well, they'll find out. I was like, who am I to block the blessing? And so I said everything I said to them was the truth. But I don't think they realized I was saying much of nothing. Like, oh, he's very decisive. Decisively stupid is what I would have loved to add to that. So, I would say in general, leave those people alone. They're not worth your energy.
So my name is Dale, but everybody know me as Business. They forgetting my real name and all that. I had to come and support Jemele Hill, man. She doing her thing. She been doing her thing for a minute now. She been going crazy. I gotta read the book.
Oh.
And I got to. I'm gonna tap into the book, make a whole video about it and all that. But I want to ask you, like, with everything that you went through, because I'm learning more about you now, because, like, with your interview and everything, and how you grew up. You grew up in Detroit, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so you know how Detroit is. Like, that's the trenches, so
Yeah.
you got to really, like, navigate through that. So I want to know, like, what encouraged you to keep going with everything with your family and all, like, the uphill battles and everything like that?
You know what? I think through that whole, when you're in it, sometimes it's hard to see beyond the experience of you being in it. But I think what kept me going mostly is like really having the true, honest feeling that I deserve better, and not to be distracted by things I really couldn't control. And even now, as an adult, that's one of the things I live by is controlling what I can control. I can control my emotions. I can control. My own self-care. I can control a lot of things that have to deal with me. And so if I focus on that and not really drive myself crazy about the things I really can't control, your perception of me, like I can't control any of that. And so I think having that kind of attitude is also a way of like to keep going. Because if you're just focused on like the race you're running, you are not fixated on what everybody else is doing. So I think that's important in terms of moving forward and getting through even the most difficult moments.
Here.
Hello.
Hello.
My name is Jillian. I'm from Compton. And I wanted to...
West Coast in the building.
I was curious. This is a personal question, but I have a couple job offers, and like one is from a white publication, one is from a black publication, and I was curious whether or not you felt that it was more impactful to tell your black story for a white audience to expose them to the truth, or to a black audience where people can relate to what you're talking about.
Well, that's a tough question as well as a great question. So here's the thing. I mean, what you have to assess is not just impact. And impact can be measured in a couple different ways. Impact as in like, as you feel like the audience, if you feel like it's a bigger audience in one publication versus another, or that you feel like your work, there will be more awareness created around your work with one platform or another. That's one type of impact. The other type of impact to consider is who is best served by this story. And the reality is, while certainly with a black audience, a lot of people, people will be reading you being able to relate, which means that when it comes to pitching stories to your bosses or your editors, you don't have to have the dreadful conversation of having to explain who black people are and why we're worth it. You don't have to run into that there. And I can tell you, the number one conversation, I'm out of the business of explaining black people to white people. I'm out of that business. And so, but that's the frustration you will run into if you are working for a white publication, because they don't have a knowledge base of your community. Hopefully in the best situation, they will trust that because you have the knowledge, let you do what you do, but you will find yourself engaging in that conversation of why we matter and why this matters. And so you just have to weigh that. That's not to say that that's bad, because the other side of it, as you said, is that exposing a condition of a people, or exposing awareness to people who normally would never even see that, So I think you just have to weigh at this stage what's more important to you, but also your development has to be a part of that. Where will you truthfully, honestly be better off when you leave there a few years from now?
Anybody's hiring.
That's right. That's right.
It's an inflation. I need the money. Question. How do you deal with your mental health? How's your mental health? And do you have any advice for anyone dealing with mental health issues?
Ooh, great question. So my mental health, as I mentioned, I have a therapist. I've been in therapy for a few years now, and that has been extremely beneficial. And yeah, I mean, listen, therapy, you know, the thing is that it's basically a tremendous exercise in learning to unlearn. So that's been helpful. And, you know, I would also say work-life balance, while that is a myth, it is, it's not going to be 50-50, and it's going to be day to day. Some days one might get 70%, some days somebody, you know, might get 30%. So like that, the balance of it is not realistic. But what you can do is something that my yoga teacher used to say all the time is give me 100% of your 10%. So if you know you only have one vacation a year, I need you to vacation hard as hell when you take that one vacation. And that is, for me, a part of, like, you know, my own self-care and preserving my mental health. There's certain times of the year that I've blocked off that I will not, you know, I will not take a job for, whatever, and they are non-negotiable. So I have 3 times that fit that bill. And so sticking to that has helped me to create boundaries in other parts of my life. So it's like, it starts with, you know, if you need therapy, I strongly recommend it. You need to designate time for yourself without feeling any kind of guilt. And you need to make those times non-negotiable, and in small and big ways develop boundaries so that you maintain your peace of mind. And check in with yourself. You know, check in with yourself and say, am I really feeling this? Or what's going on with me right now? And don't be afraid of whatever the answers are, and proceed accordingly.
So I was actually going to ask about mental health as well, but I'm just curious to know if faith at all is involved with your process of coming out of everything that you've endured.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think, you know, because I do write in the book a bit about sort of I would call them complex feelings toward God in particular. And so, you know, I think part of the faith is understanding what God has already brought me through. And so it's kind of like the old gospel song, "You wouldn't bring me this far to leave me." And so I sort of carry that, you know, with me. So I think that's got to be a part of it. Like, I just feel like with even some of the worst experiences, like, we're not going through this for nothing. It's got to be something on the other side of that. And so having that belief and faith in that, it was definitely pretty center to you know, how I navigate all this.
I wanted to ask, in honor of this book, with all the trauma and success you experienced, if you could write your own story from the beginning on how you would want or your life would be differently, how would you write it? And most people usually say they wouldn't change anything. So if that's the case for you as well, how would you intentionally continue it and ultimately write it to end, or more so transcend in the ancestral realm? And my second question is, although you were I wanted to be intentional. When the spirits talked to me, I really wanted to ask, although you were unfazed, what was the fortification process as a Black woman that prepared you before you went through new trials and tribulations? And how did you maintain them in the calm, jubilant moments where you couldn't necessarily see the storm coming and implement them to evolve you even more triumphant when the seas didn't part and you had to play your part and learn how to breathe underwater?
Come on, question. Come on, question. Come on, writer. Are you a writer, sister? Are you a writer? Well, now we're asking you questions. You a writer?
Yes, I want to know this. Are you a writer?
Are you? Well, you are now. Go ahead, Jemele. Go ahead.
I was like, she went to SAT test question for AC. I was like, oh my gosh. Okay. So I'm gonna try not to. So typically they tell us in an interview course that I took that don't ask double barrel questions because the person will pick the easiest one and answer that one, as opposed to maybe the one you really wanted to know the answer to. So I'm trying to remember everything you asked me in sequence. The first question was about writing my own story. That's what it was. Okay, so would I go back and change anything or keep it the same? I'm in the keep it the same camp because, again, I think all of that prepared me for where I am right now in this moment facing you all. So, like, I can't take any of that away because, you know, you guys have seen everything from Back to the Future to Quantum Leap. Like, if you disrupt to the Avengers, disrupt the time continuum, you might mess something up later. You might rob yourself of a lesson that you were supposed to learn. So with that being said, you asked, like, how would I, not wanting to change anything, how would I go forward and what would the ending be? You know, my favorite book to read as a kid, it was called Choose Your Own Adventure. I don't know if you remember these books. It's like, if you choose this, you know, if you choose to fight the lion, go to page 62. And then you have to figure out how it turns out. You know, if you want to keep on this course, just flip this next page. And I always chose the one where you had to go like 30 pages deep. And you were like, oh, I don't know how this is going to turn out. So I would not write my ending now because I'm robbing myself of the experience of surprise and growth. I love to be surprised. Love to be surprised because I never want to get into the mode of thinking I know everything, I've learned everything, that I'm not curious. And that's why being surprised is important. It makes you more curious. Like, wow, if that happened now and I didn't see that coming, or that was unexpected, what will happen next? So, no ending for me because that would ruin the surprise. Now, your next question. What was your fortification process? Okay. Success when things were good, when it not, and how did it involve you? So, the thing I notice when I sometimes reflect on my life is like, it's not that my dreams were too big; it was that they were too small. Because the highest thing I ever thought I was going to accomplish is making $50,000 a year and working for a daily newspaper. That was it. Nothing, and if I'm very, very lucky, my dream job was writing for Sports Illustrated. So, but I made, I think my second job out of college, I was making about $50,000 a year. So there went that. And what I learned, you talked about the fortification process, is that, really the thing that's holding me back is mostly me. Is like, I was very reluctant to step into the gifts that I've had. And I think it's because most of us, it's hard for us, as much as we say we're pursuing greatness, it's hard for us to think of ourselves in greatness. As greatness is happening, we don't even realize it, right? So I think part of where I am now in this process is like, I am going to step into my greatness no matter how truly uncomfortable it makes me. Because I have to go with the discomfort because I want to grow. And so all of that is what fortifies me. Curiosity fortifies me. It's the number one trait a journalist should have. If you can't be curious, man, you're going to be a terrible journalist.
Jemele Hill, thank you so, so much. Give it up, Beauty and Brains Book Club. You're in the right place. It's Unpack That with Miabelle.